Hey, welcome back. Now, after serving time in prison, Robert Cullen has turned his life around and is now studying a master's in criminology.
He's bringing a new rehab scheme to prisons, and he joins us this morning with Saoirse Brady from the Penal Reform Trust. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's so lovely to have you here. Now, Robert, what your life has been is beyond interesting, because you've gone through some really, really tough times. So how did you find yourself in prison?
So in a nutshell, I experienced a lot of violence growing up. That had an impact upon how I sort of showed up in the world. I was bullied a lot as a child, yeah. And I quickly learned that violence was a currency that I could exchange in order for protection and safety. You know, so this was like the framework through which I saw my way to, just to provide myself with some safety. Perpetrating violence meant experiencing more violence, and I experienced a lot of trauma. By the time I was 16, I had been held at gunpoint twice. I had seen all sorts of mental stuff. Had been homeless and was out of school. And I ended up involved in the drug trade, and then I ended up in prison for a number of armed robberies linked to a drug debt.
What age were you?
When I went to prison, 26, I got a 10-year sentence.
You were in prison for 7.5 years.
Yeah.
Can you describe what it was like?
Without using bad language, it's just not good. Like, prison is tough, you know. It's like, it does something to you, you know. It's just a real emptiness. I think, like, so I got clean in prison. I had been in addiction for a long time, and when I got clean, I became really, like, attuned to the sort of the pain, the collective pain. And, like, within them walls, there's a lot of experiences. Like, a lot of people who have grown up in care, like a disproportionate amount of people who have been sexually abused as children. Like, this is the people that were locking up, you know, people really traumatized.
There's so much study done around penal reform and you know, trying to rehabilitate people. But an awful lot of time, even here, we get messages being like, if you've been violent, if you've hurt someone, you should be going to a terrible place. That's what you need to be doing. But to let people, is there any form of rehabilitation that you felt when you were in prison, or did you find it to be a place of despair? Where things could just get worse.
I'll talk about the evidence, right?
Yeah.
So we talk about the core drivers of violence: shame, isolation, exposure to violence, and inability to meet one's economic needs. Now, where are you going to find all those things? In a prison. When we talk about addiction, Gabor Mate, so he talks about the core driver of addiction being stress, and he talks about the core driver of stress being uncertainty, a lack of information, loss of control, conflict, and isolation. All things we find in a prison. So what we have is we send people who have been traumatized and who are violent and in addiction, and we send them to a place that we know has all the things we know create or exacerbate violent and addictive tendencies. And this is why within the criminological literature, it says that prison is criminogenic, meaning that prison drives crime. Prison increases people's chances of committing more crime.
Do you not see, like you said, you got clean in prison. Do you think you would have got clean if you weren't in prison?
So I had gone looking for help. So before my imprisonment, I had 2 suicide attempts in 3 months. I went seeking help. I went to the A&E in Blanche Hospital with a letter from my GP saying that I should be signed in. I told the psychiatrist everything that had happened, about the thoughts that I was having, and he told me that my problem was drug-related, that there was nothing he could do for me. He said he would refer me to Kilmoyan, a referral which I never got. So I didn't need to go to prison to get clean. I didn't need to go to prison to get an education. I wanted all that, you know. It was the fact that it wasn't, if I had money, I could have done that stuff privately, but I just didn't have it, you know. So it was down to my social circumstances why I ended up partly in the situation. I accept personal responsibility too, you know. I accept that I have done things that I shouldn't have done. But ultimately, we need to look at why are so many people from certain places and certain experiences ended up in prison. You know, when we talk about the people in prison, there's like 3 out of every 4 people in prison are there for 12 months or less. You know, so it's like crimes of survival. It's crimes linked to addiction. And so these are the people we're literally criminalising poverty and trauma.
What, Saoirse, we like hearing 12 months or less, we know like every report from almost every prison in the state now is that, you know, people, there's 3 and 4 people inside in tiny rooms. They're throwing mattresses on beds and all this kind of stuff. Prison is meant to be a thing, you know, it's meant to be a deterrent. It's clearly not a deterrent. Like, you're smiling at that, Robert. What's going on?
Well, if it's an effective deterrent, you wouldn't see people going in and out of prison routinely. And I suppose Robert touched on it there. We did a piece of research, and Robert was part of it. He was a peer researcher on it, called From Punishment to Prevention, that we released a couple of weeks ago. And it looks at the pathways into the criminal justice system, and it looks at things like poverty, inequality, structural discrimination. You see an overrepresentation of people from some of the most deprived areas in the state going to prison. And you see an overrepresentation of Irish travellers, for example, who face discrimination every single day of their lives. So we need to address those issues. And sending people to prison for 12 months or less, they don't get a plan on release. Like, one of the things, one of the drivers of this, and it doesn't mean that if you're from a deprived area that you're automatically going to end up in prison, but it increases your risk. So, you know, we're in a, you know, you were talking earlier, Murren, about the cost of living crisis. We're in a cost of living crisis. We're in a homelessness crisis. 12% of people going to prison are coming in from homelessness. They're exiting back out into homelessness. You need to put protective factors in place to stop people from reoffending. If you don't have a roof over your head, if you don't have a steady, decent income, if you don't have access to education or work, and if you don't have the ability to have a connection with your family, then you're more likely to reoffend.
You've talked very much about prisons should be a last resort. You've talked about the more use in community service. Something that you've got involved in, Robert, is really fascinating, a new programme you've pretty much done yourself around the patriarchy, but like an anti-patriarchy academy or thesis.
Okay, yeah, so success stories. We are rolling out success stories across Irish prisons and the community. What success stories is we look at how patriarchal gender norms around how men define their masculinity. So men are defining their masculinity by a willingness to use violence, by the amount, by the extent to which we can emotionally disconnect, you know, by the way we sexually objectify women, you know, things that are really harmful. So what we do in success stories is we get participants to define the top 5 things most important to them. And then we explore love and belonging and values and integrity and what integrity means. So when we talk about integrity, toxic masculinity will tell us that we need to be different people in different places, you know, like in how we show up as men. That's compartmentalization. What integrity means is living as an integrated self, you know, so it's integrating all those parts. So it's accepting that I am a person with feelings and emotions, and that's seeing the dignity and respect in every other human, including females, you know. So we look at these things, we really embed the values of integrity and accountability, and then we look at patriarchy and explore how patriarchy and masculinity inhibit us achieving the things that we've already defined as the most important thing to us. And then together we create a sense of group accountability, and we self-define then our values and our beliefs, and we encourage each other to move forward and show up in the world in a way that is integrated and accountable.
This course that you want to roll out amongst prison, talking to some people, as you said, you were damaged, like you were a damaged person. How's it going?
So we have run one with formerly incarcerated people. We're starting now in Mountjoy in the next couple of weeks. But so this actually started in a Californian prison. It was developed by prisoners based on feminist literature by Bell Hooks, Angela Davis, and Kimberly Crenshaw. And this has been running for 15 years.
Wow, and it's helped.
It's
really helped people.
Yeah.
And I know it's going into Mountjoy in the next couple of weeks as well, which is really fantastic for you, and fantastic for you to, you know, to try and turn your life around and really help out so many more people, because we know how difficult it is out there, the frustration out there, and particularly around prisons and the overcrowding at the minute. Robert Cullen, thank you so much for coming in to talk to us this morning, and Saoirse Brady from the Irish Penal Reform Trust. Thank you both.
Thanks so much for coming in and chatting to us. Hopefully we'll talk to you again when this is up and running.